Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Berkeley County Board of Education meeting this Tuesday, May the 26th, 2015. I call this meeting to order, and I declare a quorum is present and the media has been notified. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
A second.
We have a motion by Mr. Obie to approve the agenda and seconded by Ms. Swaby. All in favor of this motion respond by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the same sign. Then the motion is approved by a vote of 7-0. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Oops, I'm sorry. Getting ahead of myself. Let's all stand for the opening prayer. Pledge of allegiance. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 12th, 2015 meeting and the budget workshop May 19th, 2015 meeting?
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. You have a motion, Ms. Walford. I'll yield to you.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting on May the 12th of 2015 and the budget workshop May 19th, 2015 by Ms. Swafford, seconded by Mr. Murray. All those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries then 7-0. Moving on to the agenda item 5, the approval of the April 2015 Head Start Budget Expenditure Report, April 2015 Head Start Credit Card Report, revised staff handbook, revised parent handbook, and the prospective new hires. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve item number 5 for the April 2015 Head Start Budget Expenditure Report, the Head Start Credit Card Report, revised staff handbook, revised parent handbook, and prospective new hires.
Second.
All right, then we have a motion by Ms. Swaby, and it is seconded by Ms. Swafford to approve the April 2015 Head Start Budget Expenditure Report, 2015 Head Start Credit Card Report, revised staff handbook, revised parent handbook, and prospective new hires. All in favor?
I got a question.
Yes.
Do we know the dollar figure that's coming out of the general fund to continue to fund the Head Start program?
It is in kind that goes toward, that we have to have for the grant, and that's what the monies from the general fund comes from. And when I'm talking in kind, I'm talking that our principals or our site supervisors, we do have the transportation that is funded out of the general fund, but we're often able to give some of that money back for monies that we have left over because we're very frugal with our maintenance, our cafeteria workers, those kinds of things. But really the dollar amount would be the transportation.
Okay.
But we do offset that with what we have left at the end of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Any other questions?
everything is in kind, Dr. Whitley, other than the transportation expenses.
Yes, sir.
That's a good way to look at it. All right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, all of those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, Same sign. Then that motion carries by a vote of 7-0. Moving on to agenda item number 6, the Legacy Builders Special Recognition. I turn it over to Miss Amy Murray.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Mr. Franchini, and members of the board, and all of you who have joined us tonight. We have quite a few different special recognitions, and at this time I'd like to invite Mr. Charlie Davis, District Athletic Director, to make those recognitions.
Thank you, Chairman Hayes, Mr. Franchini. It's my honor to recognize a group of people tonight that have been very valuable to athletics in Berkeley County for a long time. The first thing I'd like to do is ask Guy Walker and Dr. John Holvey. Guy is with Trident Sports Medicine, supervisor there. Dr. Holvey is with South Carolina Sports Medicine. I think if y'all would just stand right back here, please. Let me tell you why they're here. It's my honor tonight to recognize Trident Sports Medicine for the wonderful support they have provided for the athletes in Berkeley County. They've done this for the past 25 years. They provide game coverage with certified athletic trainers and a sports medicine trained physician at home football games. Our 7 high schools can also send injured players, injured athletes, to Trident Sports Medicine's Saturday morning clinic free of charge. We've done over 60 of these this year. Over 1,000 of our Berkeley County athletes participated in the Trident concussion management testing. All of us know what a highly visible arena we are in with concussions in football now. They are the leaders in the state in baseline testing for concussion management. And they've done over 1,000 of our athletes this year with that baseline testing. Finally, all of our high school athletes are required to pass a physical prior to participating in any sport. This can be a major cost to parents, but also to the school district. Trident Sports Medicine coordinates conducting these physicals with the cooperation and participation of other facilities. I'd like to name these other facilities that cooperate with Trident Sports Medicine: Sweetgrass Pediatrics, Palmetto Primary Care, South Carolina Sports Medicine, Low Country Sports Medicine, and Trident Family Practice. They have done this year over 800 physicals for the athletes in our 7 high schools. This is a major savings to not only the district, but to our parents for each one of these physicals. They've donated their time to do this free of charge. We want to recognize Guy Walker with Trident Sports Medicine and Dr. John Holvey as leaders in this effort. And Mr. Franchini, as you and Mr. Hayes come down, please join me in showing Guy and Dr. Holvey our appreciation for what they do for our athletes and Berkeley County residents. Coach Moffitt here? There you are. I was looking at Rick back. Excuse me. Also, we have another special recognition. We'd like to recognize Coach Katrina Moffitt. Katrina, would you come up, please? And if you'll just stand right behind me here. Coach Moffitt is being recognized tonight for being selected by the Greater Charleston Association of Umpires. And anytime you get umpires to recognize somebody for sportsmanship, you know they're special. And Katrina is the ladies softball coach at Hanahan High School. The Umpires Association selected Katrina out of all the coaches in the area as their selection for the Ed Green Sportsmanship Award this year. This is a tremendous honor, not only for Coach Moffitt, but for those athletes involved in softball at Hanahan High School. Thank you, Coach Moffitt, for teaching your girls the importance and value of sportsmanship in a way that's obvious to this group of people. Thank you. Hear, hear. Last but not least, it's my honor to recognize in Legacy Builders the Hanahan High School men's track team. Coach David Pratt, if you would bring up the folks you brought with you and stand back here while we talk about you a minute. School board and audience, this group of men, along with Coach David Pratt, have accomplished being state champions in AAA, track men's state champions in AAA, not just for the year 2015, but also they have repeated as state champions from 2014. So congratulations, guys. Coach Pratt, if you would step up and introduce these young men, and we appreciate everything you do. Matter of fact, is it number 7 or number 8? 8. Coach Pratt has been the head coach of 8 different state champion track teams, which is tremendous accomplishment. Coach.
That's because of guys like this, of course. And again, they represented themselves well, their families well, the Hanahan High School, just a great performance. At the state track meet, they scored, let me go back, and we're in 3A. They've had 3A in the state of South Carolina since around 1957. And we scored 97 points at the state track meet, and that ties the most points ever scored at a 3A meet. So I think they had an awesome performance. All these guys are state champions. Not only is it part of a team, but individual state champions are part of a relay. Right here, this is Dominic Green. He was state champion in the shot put. If you'd step forward. Next is Quincy Mitchell, and he was a member of the 4x100 meter relay that was state champions. Quincy, you step forward. Next is Saheem Brooks, also a member of the 4x100 meter relay that was state champion. Sam Denmark. He was a member of the 4x100 meter relay, and he was also individual champion in the 100 meters and the 200 meters.
Coach, not only are they talented, but they look great. Thank you very much in honoring all these groups tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, while you're taking your seat, just a quick announcement for Coach Pratt, Coach Moffitt, and the state champion Hanahan Hawks. It's my understanding that the senior class was so proud of you all last night that they filled the hallway with balloons. So what a wonderful recognition. Coach Pratt, Coach Moffitt, thank you for all you do for our kids. It's very special, very special.
That concludes our special recognitions for the evening, but please do take a moment to read our Legacy Builders publication. In this edition, you'll see that Hanahan Middle students raised $6,689 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, that 167 eighth grade students were named South Carolina Junior Scholars, that Stratford's Aaliyah DeVoe finished first in the shot put during the 4A state championship track and field meet, along with so many other stories. So please take a look at Legacy Builders publication. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Moving on to agenda item number 7.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I recommend that we allow these young people to head home for the evening? They've got
Yes.
some studying to do tonight, I'm sure, with exams on the way. Congratulations. Mr. Chairman, there's only one senior in that group, if you were wondering. They'll all be back.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, clarification of citizen comments. Starting something new tonight, and in fairness to myself and to my colleagues, I felt it was important to make sure that information about this board during the citizens' comments is correct and factual and should not be taken or used out of context. At the May 12th board meeting, one of our citizens quoted Board Chair Murray from news articles concerning the superintendent search. He quoted Dr. Murray as saying that we could not go wrong with any one of the 3 finalists. Dr. Murray did make this statement, but this statement was made after the first round of interviews, and at the time we had just narrowed the field from 6 to 3 candidates. We then held special group interviews, employee and community drop-ins, and a second board interview with each of the 3 final candidates. When one of the main candidates removed himself from consideration, the conversations around the table indicated the majority of the board felt the remaining candidates were not a good fit. These discussions were based on the second interview and feedback from the special interest groups, employees, and the community. For the majority, this proved the search process worked. To quote Chairman Murray again, this is the single most important job of the school board, and we want to get it right. Thank you. Moving on to citizens' comments, and as we prepare for those, In order to conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, we ask that you honor the following guidelines. The stakeholder comments are welcomed and encouraged. However, the board will not take immediate action on public comments at this meeting. Any person wishing to address the board must register prior to the meeting. Comments must be regarding programs, policies, or procedures. Comments regarding other than the child of the speaker will not be heard in public session. Groups addressing the same topic should select one speaker. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and the board chair reserves the right to allot additional time or to halt public comments that do not adhere to these guidelines. At this time, Mr. Terry Hardesty, you'll come to the podium. Mr. Hardesty is going to talk about the superintendent search.
Good evening, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Well, I've kind of taken back a little bit by your agenda item 7. I'm going to go ahead and speak a little bit about why I came up here first, and then I'm going to respond to your comment. I noticed on your agenda that you have an item called interim superintendent. Well, we have a superintendent right now, and I believe this board needs to get on with the business of hiring a permanent superintendent. Summer is full of superintendents all over the nation looking for new work. You're competing with Charleston County, Horry County, other large districts around here that are going to pull candidates. And it's imperative that this board do its work and find a permanent superintendent. And I implore you to get on with that business rather than be worried about a comment that I made where I actually quoted the Post and Courier. Now, I have the article right here. I can read it to you verbatim. But I didn't take anything out of context. All I did was quote the newspaper. And I would suggest, I really would suggest, that if you have a problem with communication, it's from this board to the public. And it's not from the public to you, because I think our citizens of Berkeley County have been crying about you wasting tax money on paying people to sit at home. You have a superintendent right now that's sitting at home being paid. He cannot honor his contract. He should be terminated. He should have been terminated the day he was indicted. I'm sorry. I don't buy it. Thank you.
This time, Ms. Patricia Eckstein.
Good evening. It was a year ago this week that I came to the board, and on behalf of our newly formed Citizens Committee for the Tanner Foster Creek Elementary School, we asked the board to set up a community committee, as you did with Daniel Island, Painhoy, and Clements Ferry residents. 10 months ago, several members of the board and school staff did meet in August at Shield of Faith Church, where the school district announced they'd be seeking a request for proposals for the Tanner Foster Creek School. 12 weeks ago, we met with Dr. Murray and Dr. Thompson, and at that meeting and a subsequent meeting the next day with City of Hanahan officials, 2 significant changes were made by the city in their contract offer to the school district. Quickly the next week, those proposals came up. One was adopted, one was rejected, and both parties said that Tuesday night and Wednesday, and at the end of the week, they would still continue to work with each other. I thank you very much, Mr. Hayes, for calling me 2 weeks ago to work at setting up a meeting. And through our FOIA requests, we've learned a lot about the unique circumstances of each land acquisition in the recent years that are donations or purchases. So that gives us a different feel for what you were looking through. We did ask on April 16th, when you were in the midst of your search for a superintendent, to meet with you again, hoping we could get that last foot across the bridge and get the shovel in the ground there on Williams Lane. And it was postponed while you were looking for your new superintendent. So when Mr. Hayes did call me last week, and after the board action 2 weeks ago where you all agreed that the superintendent could meet with us and any willing board members who wanted to meet with us, thank you for your phone call, and you had asked on behalf of Archie and the rest of the board members that the meeting be postponed at least until after school closed, and we agreed. But we do think that the date that came back to us of June 22nd, that's 4 weeks away, that's 6 weeks from when we asked, and we would ask the board to reconsider, and would you look at your calendars and see if we could meet anywhere the week of June 8th through June 15th. Time is of the essence. I don't know if you are thinking about it being, we had asked for a public advertised meeting so that then if there was a quorum, we wouldn't have to worry about an advertisement if members of the board wanted to attend more. I guess at this time a quorum would still be 5 with 8 members on the board. I don't know before 4 would be considered. But we would ask you to take a look at that. We're anxious. Again, we're this close. You are heavily invested in the Williams Lane project, and we think between us, members of the board, and the Citizens Committee with the city, we can get this finalized in no time at all. So I'll send out an email tomorrow, I guess, if that would be all right to all of you, and to see who would be available, and see if we can take it from there. But thank you so much for getting back to us right away.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 9, the Deputy Superintendent, item for action, second reading of the policy IHC, the ranking class, honor graduates, and graduation ceremonies. Dr. Levine.
Good evening, Board Chair Hayes, Interim Superintendent Franchini, and other members of the board. Policy IHC, ranking class, honor graduates, and graduation ceremonies is being brought before you for second and final reading with the recommended changes that were noted during the first reading of the policy at the May 12th school board meeting. The additions included the addition of State Board of Education Regulation 43-234, defined programs, grades 9 through 12, and the removal of the phrase State Certificate of Units Earned. As such, at this time, it is the recommendation of the administration to approve the second and final reading for policy as listed under item 9 of the May 26, 2015 board agenda.
Thank you. We have a recommendation from the administration. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the recommendation of the administration to approve the second and final reading of policy IHC as listed under agenda item 9.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Lee, seconded by
Mr. McQuillan.
Mr. McQuillan, to approve the second reading of the policy IHC, ranking class, honor graduates, and graduation ceremonies. Do we have any discussion? Then we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Then the motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item for information, the impact of the state changes for teachers in 2015-2016, Part 3, the human resources. Dr. Levine.
Thank you. Still standing. I think for this we can say and refer to an old song that some of us have heard quite a bit. Everything must change. I'm not going to sing it for you. Nothing stays the same, and that old saying about the only thing that is constant is change, of course. So that is definitely where we are. And tonight you will hear part 3 in the continuing saga, the awesome saga, in terms of what's going on with our state and what's going on for our teachers. And I have to say this, as far as the impact that change is having on our teachers and on the classroom, we can definitely appreciate it. We can appreciate the hard work that our teachers are doing. We know that there is so much that has to go into some of the mandates. Remember now, a whole lot of what you're going to hear this evening has nothing to do with Berkeley County making a decision as far as an evaluation change, as far as this procedure goes. It is actually what we've been directed to do. However, we know that there is one thing that is true in Berkeley County, and that is always a constant for us. It is that we do things, and we do things very well. And we make sure that our teachers are taken care of, because we know at the very end of the day, we know it's about what our students are learning and what they're going to get out of the process. So in spite of a whole lot of the negative that you've heard about the process, we are determined to be extremely positive about it and look at it in terms of how it's going to affect the classroom and affect learning. And at this time, I'd like for Mr. Davis to come up. He is our Executive Director for Leadership and Development, and he has done a wonderful job of coordinating our effort. Not only has he worked with the evaluators, with Margaret Tabor, our coordinator in the evaluation office, but he has also worked with Dorchester County and Charleston County as well in a consortium. So I want you to know that this isn't just Berkeley County figuring it out. It's also groups of other educators in evaluations who are trying to figure out how can we do this best for our teachers and how can we serve our students best. I also have to warn you about something that is going to happen in this presentation. You are going to see some charts. At first, you're going to ask, what in the world is this? But Mr. Davis is going to do an excellent job, as he always does, with explaining it. Another warning, you are going to get a cadre tonight of alphabet soup, is the best way to describe it. S-L-O-E-V-A-S, or EVAS. EVAS is, I told you it's alphabet soup. You're going to hear also about VAM, value added measures. So I promise you, this won't be the last time you hear from us in terms of all of this, but we just wanted to give you some insight into some things that you've probably read about in the newspapers, you've gotten some information on, so we felt that it was just our a process that we needed to follow through to give you some information and give you the opportunity to ask us questions. And if we don't have the answers to them, we promise you we'll definitely get them for you. But I think this is going to be pretty thorough tonight, even though there are a number of slides. We're not going to talk about each one of them for 5 minutes, but we just want to give you just a lead into it. So at this time, I bring before you Mr. Davis, and once he finishes his presentation, we also want you to see the individuals in the audience who are also working in the department, who have done a tremendous job and tremendous effort.
Board Chairman Hayes, Superintendent Franchini, ladies and gentlemen of the board and the audience. Tonight I bring to you part 3 of a series entitled The Impact of State Changes for Teachers in 2015-16. The information shared tonight is from the Division of Human Resources. This slide right here provides background information about why changes were made to the evaluation system. Most of you are familiar with the No Child Left Behind Act. South Carolina Department of Education submitted a waiver requesting relief from requirements for NCLB. The waiver was granted, provided the state included student growth measures in our current teacher evaluation system. This is how we arrived at this point. This chart right here represents the requirements that were set forth by the United States Department of Education and how the State Department of South Carolina State Department of Education actually implemented those particular recommendations. So if you look at those items that are listed in red, those are the things that are new. looking back and forth, if you look at our current system at line 2 right here, this is what's different in these two evaluation systems. Our current system rates teachers' performance using 2 levels. At the summative, at the end of their evaluation, which is the summative results, teachers are either judged met or not met. With the new system, as you will see later on during the presentation, there will be 4 performance levels, and we'll share that with you later. In addition to that, the recommendation also was that we include what you call student growth measures, which is the line right here. And if you look over here, this is how it will look in the new evaluation system in the state of South Carolina. It's going to include student growth measures, and this is what they are called, value-added measures, and then the abbreviation is VAM. You'll hear me talk about VAM later on during the presentation. In addition to that, we have what you call student learning objectives. We call those SLOs. So again, the items presented in red are what the changes are. This slide right here shows how our evaluation system evolved over time. If you look at the items that are on the very left, this is what it looks like currently. The year 2014-15 is what you call a bridge year. So this year is where we started to establish a baseline in terms of what those student growth measures are. So if you look right here, we have teachers who actually had to submit rosters, verifying rosters that the students were in their classes, and they collected value-added scores based off of their state assessed tests this year. In 2015-16, the items again listed in red are what's new. So classroom-based teachers' evaluations will be aligned with ESA. Waiver guidelines, student growth will become a part of the classroom-based teachers' evaluation, and we'll use these. The effectiveness will be measured through professional practice as well as student growth measures. We've all talked about this before, but the purpose of evaluation of any teacher educator evaluation is that what we do is we evaluate teachers annually. What we want to do is provide them with clear, timely feedback. We use the evaluation results to make personnel decisions, and overall, it includes training for all teachers, principals, and evaluators. The purpose of this is to provide support and assistance for our teachers as they move throughout the profession. Always focusing on continuous improvement. We included this slide, and the reason we included this slide is because when you look at the new evaluation system now, it's a twofold process. And the things that we consider are accountability, which is what we have now, as well as effectiveness, determining what the impact of a teacher's instructional practices are on what they're going to have on a student's growth. This slide represents the accountability and effectiveness components of the expanded educator evaluation system. When you look at number 1, which is professional practice, this is what we're talking about, accountability. This is what we already do, currently known as safety. A part of the formal evaluation, which everyone is familiar with, safety. You have all of these 4 components. We call those 4 domains. And then it also includes what you call student growth measures, and this is how we determine effectiveness. VAM, which are value-added measures, and SLO, student learning objectives. Again, a part of the professional practice, all of the items that are highlighted in red are what the changes are. If you think about our current system now, all of our induction contract teachers, they go through they receive observations. And we observe all of our teachers, but the reason it's highlighted in red is because the State Department requires this now. Before, those weren't required components, so all annual contract teachers will be required to have an observation, an integral observation. And continuing contract teachers during their recertification year will have to go through a full formal safety, and we'll talk about that in the past, which consists of, later on, which consists of observations as well. The third part is, again, the effectiveness piece. All teachers collect student growth evidence each year, which is going to be either a statewide assessment, VAM, as well as student learning objectives. The things that are highlighted red are what's new. And I want to focus your attention on this pretty heavily. When you look at our SLO conferences, this will be a change because what it's going to require is going to require more meetings with our administrators. If you think back with our current evaluation system, typically there is we have what you call a pre-evaluation conference at the beginning of the school year, and then there's the summative conference for those teachers who are going through formal evaluation, and at the end of the year they receive a summative. In other situations, such as those teachers who are on continuing contracts, they do what you call a GBE. You have a conference at the beginning to decide what that goals-based evaluation will be, and then at the very end, you make a judgment based off of what the teachers, based off of the level of performance in terms of the goals-based evaluation. So that's going to, the mid-year conference is going to be huge, a huge component, and you'll see numbers later on in the presentation on how this is going to impact what we do in the school system. Let's talk about the third piece. Let's talk about the second piece. Teacher is measuring student growth. Remember, we mentioned VAM and we mentioned student learning objectives. In order to understand how we determine effectiveness, you have to understand the difference between student proficiency as well as student growth. I want you to think about that for a minute. Student proficiency and growth. When you think about proficiency, proficiency is the ability of students to meet an expected level of academic performance. We're basically talking about mastery here. You have these set of standards, and that we want at the very end, and I'm trying to simplify this for you, is that they achieve all of the standards. So either whereas student growth, and when you're talking about student growth, it's the gain in student achievement. So they may not master all of the standards, but they're going to make progress towards mastering all of the standards and making adequate progress. The very first one is value-added measure. Value-added measures are one piece of evidence collected throughout the year to determine student growth. So when we talk about value-added measures, a growth model becomes value-added when it's tied back to something. For example, teachers in those state-assessed tests have submitted verification rosters indicating that students are in their courses. So when they receive the results, they'll be able to say this student was in this particular teacher's classroom for a certain period of time, and therefore we can attribute the growth measure, the growth, back to this teacher's instructional practices. In many models, value-added measure is the difference between predicted performance and actual performance on state-assessed tests. For example, if you all can think back to the time we administered what you call the measures of academic progress, formerly known as MAP. At the beginning of the school years, the students take MAP at the beginning of the year. It's kind of like a pre-assessment. And at the very end of that pre-assessment, you receive a score, as well as a prediction of what the students should score at the very end of the year. So if a student scores a 230, and that growth model will predict that the child should be at a 240 at the end of the school year, and the student only grows 2 points, then they didn't necessarily meet their targeted goal. Value-added measures. This slide indicates which teachers will be responsible for utilizing value-added measures. So if you look at, these are what you call the tested subjects. In the state of South Carolina, English language arts grades 4 through 8, mathematics grades 4 through 8, as well as science in grades 4 through 8, algebra 1, biology 1, English 1, and U.S. history. What I want you to focus your attention on, those assessments in consecutive years, the methodology for determining growth is a growth standard. And what we mean by that growth standard is that the growth standard methodology is employed for those students who are tested on subjects that are in consecutive grades. For example, you take English language arts in grade 4, then again there's an English language arts assessment in grade 5, pass, formerly known as pass. So you have standards that are cyclical that are measuring some of the same standards. Whereas when you talk about predictive measures, assessments not in consecutive years, algebra 1 for instance, the methodology is predictive. there's not a pre-algebra 1 or a pre-algebra 2 in terms of the testing. So what we have to focus our attention on is kind of like a best guess. So what we've done in the past is that we had math. If a student scored a certain level on math, which is maybe like a 240, then the prediction would be that that child would do very well in Algebra 1, and they would be successful on the end of course exam. So you look at a combination of assessments that are not the same as Algebra 1. Non-consecutive grades of assessment data. Student learning objectives are another source of evidence collected throughout the year to determine student growth. A student learning objective is reflective of time. So if you take a look at the slide, it's a measure of classroom-based teachers' impact on student learning within a given interval of instruction. And I want to focus your attention here because that's going to impact us in many different ways. We have some courses in our system that are 9 weeks, that are semester long, and that are year long. So let's just say perhaps if a teacher teaches a 9 weeks course, that interval of time will be within that 9 weeks. P, for instance, in the elementary grades, you're going to have an SLO conference at the very beginning, and then there will be that mid-year conference to determine the mid-course conference to determine progress, and at the very end, you have the final outcome of student growth. So there are 3 conferences within that 9-week period of time. Likewise with the semester, as well as with the year-long courses as well. When you look at what's happening in Berkeley County School District, teachers of courses in which growth is not determined by state mandated assessments, we have over 300 courses. I think when we looked at the numbers, it was approximately 385 courses where we do not have state mandated assessments to determine student growth. And the way that we can determine student growth is through common assessments, district benchmark assessments. If you have a PE class, fitness grams, performance rubrics, pre and post assessments. And looking at this slide, the thing that comes to my mind is flexibility. There's some flexibility in terms of how we administer student learning objectives, which is very beneficial for teachers. Note, at the very end of the slide, if you look at the bottom, media specialists, speech pathologists, and school guidance counselors are not going to be impacted by student learning objectives. We're still going to use the old evaluation system to evaluate those teachers. This current evaluation system is strictly for classroom-based teachers with students. We talked about the levels. If you could think back to an earlier slide, we talked about our system going from 2 levels, which are not met and met, to 4 levels. And here's what the 4 levels are. Teachers will be judged on these 4 levels at the very end of their evaluation. How that's determined. Many of you probably read articles, you saw stories on the news about there being 3 parts to this evaluation, that the professional practice piece would be 50% of an evaluation, district choice would be 30%, and student growth measures would be 20%. Well, that's changed. What the State Department has come up with now is what you call a decision matrix. And I'm not going to try to explain this to you all. It took us a great deal of time to figure out how we get the end results, but we did it. And actually, thanks to Mr. Bowles, he's actually come up with a formula that works out pretty well for us to actually come up with the final results. But if you look on the side here, you have your 4 domains. This is the first part of it. This is the accountability piece. And you have the different levels here. So in essence, based off of all of the items that a teacher has to turn in terms of professional practice, their planning, long-range plans, unit work samples, classroom observations, classroom environment, and professionalism, you'll come up with one of these ratings based off of a list of decision rules, and I'll share those with you later to determine what the overall rating is for this particular piece of the evaluation. Ooh. All right, now the second part of this is the growth measure. Once you've determined what the professional practice piece was, Then you take that information and you insert it in this chart to come up with the student growth piece to determine the overall rating. For example, if a teacher, let's just say, was exemplary in terms of professional practice, you look here, and then let's just say they score proficient on student growth, their overall evaluation would be proficient at the very end, based off of a list of decision rules. Here's what those decision rules are, and these are rules that were determined by the State Department of Education. These are rules that were given to us. The effects of the expanded educator support and evaluation system. This is how it will impact the teachers in Berkeley County School District. So in 2015-16, it is projected that we will have 149 induction contract teachers. These are teachers who are new to the profession. So for professional practice, that's this piece right here, what we're going to do is prepare them for safety preparation, where we'll teach them about the adept performance standards, teach them how to write long-range plans and unit work samples. And then the part that's going to be new, we already do this right here. The part that's going to be new will be the student growth piece. Our induction contract teachers will receive training and develop SLOs for formative purposes only, will not be used to make employment decisions. Of course, these teachers too will have to, those that are in state assessed courses, state assessed courses will have to complete roster verification that started this year to start that 3-year rolling average. Mid-year and final conferences. The chart at the very bottom is the projection. On an average, we have about 150 induction contract teachers each year. So this is a projection based off of an average of these 3 numbers, just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with. Annual contract teachers. These are our teachers in the second year. They're either in their they're in the second year of their teaching cycle, the second year. And when we have teachers that are in their second year, they go through formal evaluation, or the principal can recommend that they go through diagnostic assistance, or that year, we do have some second year teachers going through a diagnostic assistance, or they can recommend that they stay on induction contract. But let's talk about this for the purpose of annual contract teachers. It is projected that we're going to have 225 annual contract teachers. For professional practice, these teachers go through formal evaluation, which is safety right here. This is formal evaluation. And these teachers will also receive training and develop SLOs. That will be new, and this is for formative purposes only. Diagnostic assistants, these are teachers who may have gone through formal evaluation and had some trouble, and what we'll do is we'll give them a year of help assistance, because we want them to remain in the profession, and they too will be given supporting assistance on targeted areas for professional growth. They receive training and develop SLOs for formative purposes only as well. I want you to take a look at the very bottom here. What's going to pick up? You remember we talked about the number of conferences. This SLO mid-year conference is going to be something that's extra that administrators and our evaluators will have to do. So it's going to increase the number of conferences that our school administrators as well as our teacher evaluators are going to have to be involved in order to give the teachers the support and assistance that they need. Teachers in their 3rd or 4th year of teaching are on a continuing contract will write an SLO which will satisfy the requirements for goals-based evaluation. So you may hear teachers saying they're going to be doing 2 things. That's not the case. They're going to write an SLO, and as a part of the SLO will allow us to embed a GBE in it so that we can accomplish the same purpose doing one thing. The only difference with an annual contract teacher now is that we're going to have an integral observation, so that's going to be different. It's required with the new evaluation system. When you get down to the second slide, to the second part of the chart, SLOs, continuing contract teachers in grades PK through 5 will receive training and develop SLOs. what the State Department said is it could be used for evaluative purposes, but what we did is we communicated with the State Department, and they gave us a little time to actually train those teachers in grades pre-K through 5. Grade 6 through continuing contract teachers in grades 6 through 12 who receive training and develop SLOs for formative purposes. So we're working in collaboration with the State Department to make it more doable for our teachers in Berkeley County School District. And again, these teachers too have to verify rosters. Again, the mid-course evaluations is going to be extra. It's going to be extra for administrators. It's going to be extra for teachers to have to attend one additional conference on top of some of the additional things that they have to do as teachers. Looking at our system, this is where the majority of our employees fall within the continuing contract level as well as the annual GBE levels. So currently this year, we have 1,737 teachers in this particular area. Next year, these are projections based off of historical data that we've had over the past years. Now, this is huge. Continuing contract teachers during their recertification year. Beginning in 2016-17, during the recertification year, continuing contract teachers will undergo formal evaluation. Those of you who are educators in the audience, you know that in order to recertify, you have to earn a total of 120 certificate renewal points in order to renew your teaching certificate. It's called licensure now in the State Department. That's what the State Department calls it, licensure, your license. That being said, there are many ways that they do that. They can either take a course or they can participate in professional development. In addition to either taking courses or participating in professional development, they're going to have to go through a full formal evaluation beginning in 2016-17. So everything that a second-year teacher does, that when they're in the profession, continuing contract teachers are going to have to do the same thing every 5 years during their recertification year. All right, so again, safety. They will still have to write an SLO, which will be a part of that. And if you look down here and the things that are highlighted in black, there is a proposal now to bring national board certified teachers, their renewal cycle. They're going to make it more in line with what our recertification process is for teachers. So every 5 years, you have national board certified teachers redoing their national board certification as well. And this is supposed to take effect beginning in 2022. Huge changes in terms of the regulations. Now, this very last chart down here, I want you to take a look at this. On an average, if you look at our safety evaluation, these are our formal evaluations. These are the teachers that are going through full formal evaluation. On an average, we have about 210 evaluations per year. With the evaluators that are in the Office of Leadership Development and Evaluation, each one of those evaluators actually is responsible for about 27 evaluations. Their caseload that's throughout the district, and this is how we support schools. What I did is to come up with the projections. These are projections that principals usually recommend. There's some continuing contract teachers that they recommend. On an average, we get about 5 or 6 of those a year, which will increase that number to about 215. Now, this is what we currently do. What I did is I had Mrs. Tabor, our evaluation coordinator, pull the numbers of teachers that would go through that if we had to implement this in 2016, this new mandate that will take place in 2016-17, if we had to implement that this year, in addition to those 210 evaluations, we would have had 321 more. Plus the special area. The special area evaluations are speech, media specialists, guidance counselors. This is what the total number of evaluations would have been this school term, 550. So that's 321 on top of the 210, on top of the 229 when you add the special area. So looking at what our projections, I know these numbers look a little skewed. I wanted to be realistic. I didn't want to overshoot, but I wanted to give you some accurate information to be realistic about what it is that we're doing. So if you look at 215, our projections are pretty solid for 215 for 2015-16. So you add these 300 additional ones, it's going to bring that total to 534, more than what an evaluator can manage. They're laughing because we spend many of nights, all nights, typing evaluations sometimes and getting information and feedback back to teachers. So when this take effect in 2016-17, it's gonna have a huge impact on our system for teacher evaluators as well as for school building level principals. We're gonna look at about 300 additional. To make it more real, we looked at some numbers of specific schools. Goose Creek, for example. We looked at Goose Creek High School. This year, they had 6 evaluations, formal evaluations. If we had to implement this new system, it would have been 33. So 27 on top of that. So you're talking about 7 per administrator in addition to those added to an evaluator's caseload. Huge implications. One of the things that Dr. Levine talked to you all about is that we're going to be very reasonable. Most of you all know that I'm a very practical person, and I'm going to do what's best for teachers. And my staff is going to do what's best for teachers as well. So what we've tried to do is create a plan that was very reasonable in terms of rolling this new evaluation system out. Of course, we did an overview with principals, so they're aware of this. We've had some conversations with Teacher Forum, and we're going to be presenting during their retreat during the summertime as well. Tonight, we're giving you a board presentation, not to overwhelm teachers, but to give teachers an idea of what they're going to be faced with when they come back in August. We're creating what you call a web-based SLO overview, the basics. What is an SLO? What are value-added measures, so that they'll have an idea of what they're going to be faced with during the fall when they return. Of course, my team and I, we're going to have to attend some trainings at the State Department of Education. We're just being trained as well. So, and our training is scheduled for mid-June, so we're going to be in Columbia learning about this process. And then hopefully we have enough information to provide principals during our summer leadership conference with the most accurate information. And the trainings will continue throughout the year, but ongoing professional development throughout 2015-16. It's going to be a hard year, but we're going to try to make it as easy as we can for teachers. It's going to be tough because this is something that's new, and you know with change, it's always tough. But we do try, I do try to respect and the time of our teachers in the classroom. At this time, I want to thank my fabulous team for joining us tonight. So if you all will all stand. Mrs. Tabor, our evaluation coordinator. She's the brain behind this office. So, Miss Trish, I'm not going to call names because I missed one over, but this is the team, and some of them could not be here tonight. All right. We gave you a plethora of information, and I want to open this floor up for questions. No questions?
I think we're still processing.
I guess
Come back in 2 weeks.
So what are the implications for our principals and our leadership teams?
Our
How much time is this going to take away from children?
It's going to take a great deal of time away from children. You know, being a former principal, anytime you add an additional conference to my plate, that's going to be some additional time. And I can think, looking at the training, and it's kind of a lot of the techniques that we would use in a cognitive coaching class is what those techniques are what principals are going to use in the development of the SLO. So hypothetically, for example, let's just say if a teacher meets with a principal and the SLO is not up to par, the one that he or she presents, then they're going to have to go back and reconfigure that SLO and come back. So it could be even an additional conference. So it's going to be a great deal of time away from our children. In addition to the teacher not having opportunities to plan effectively, spend that time planning. Anytime you have to attend a conference, that's even additional time away from your classroom, away from that planning session to provide the best instruction for our students.
What have you learned from other districts that have been playing with this for a while with the State Department?
Well, I can tell you that the consortium that we're a part of, the roundtable that we formed with Charleston County, Dorchester 4, Beaufort County. Charleston County is the district that is farther along in the process than most of us. And one of the things that we did learn from that group is we wanted to have input from our teacher forum as well as from all of the stakeholders before we rolled it out so we can provide the most practical rollout plan as opposed to what they did. But I can tell you the implications were huge in terms of them not getting their scores back in time to determine growth. And that was a problem with Charleston County School.
What budget implications has it had?
In my office?
Well, with Charleston County specifically and the other, there were other districts that piloted, right?
Right.
What were some of the budget considerations? Were there more evaluators needed at the district level, or?
I think Charleston County did increase the number of evaluators, but they also increased their support system as well in terms of the full release mentor teachers. We added 2 of those to our office last year. We could use more to provide support and assistance. There was lots of support and assistance with that full release mentor. I think they have about 14. I'm not sure, and I don't want to go on record to say that that's the exact number, but that's an approximate number. But they did increase the number of full release mentor teachers as well as their evaluators in the schools as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Hayes, do the other districts that you met with, do they use an evaluator, a principal, and then a teacher from another school? That I understand that's how we handle the process. Do other places have 3 people involved?
What the state regulation requires is that for highly consequential teams, is that we have 3 evaluators on those teams. Now, there can be an evaluator and the principal on that team as well. What we've come to in our district, and I can just speak for Berkeley County School District, at the very end of the year, I know there are times when we have to make contract decisions. The way that our evaluation process is conducted, we've not really ever had difficulty in terms of making those contract decisions because it is a 3-member team. And what's important about it is that because that evaluation document originates in the Office of Leadership Development and Evaluation, then it's the way that it is written, it is consistent, and that we make sure all of the procedures and safeguards are followed. That is the purpose of these evaluators being on those teams. That evaluation process is administered fairly and equitably across the district. And I can safely say that happens in our school district. These evaluators do it very well. We take care of a lot of the legwork before it gets to you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Davis, will this create 2 groups of teachers? One group who would be assessed with student test scores and another group who would not?
That's a great question, Dr. Murray.
You know how I feel about this system. I'm sorry you had to present it.
That's a great question. What we've determined is that when you read, if you read the fine print of this educator evaluation system, all of our teachers can actually write SLOs, which is what we've determined is what's best for the teachers in Berkeley County School District. Now, what that guideline states is that the evaluated measure can be one piece of the SLO, which means that we can use multiple data points to determine growth. So we do have to include the evaluated measure in that SLO, but in addition to, we can use like common assessments, district benchmarks, we use multiple data points to determine the growth. So it's not all based on the evaluated measure. We didn't think that would be fair to the teachers in Berkeley County, which is why we decided against it.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Looks like you've satisfied the questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Moving on to agenda item number 10, financial services. We have an item for action and we have an item for information. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Mr. Franchini. You have before you invitation for bid 450 for Berkeley High Gym, partial roof replacement. It is the gym roof, approximately 6,000 square feet, and it's replacing the leakage sections, and it will include accessories like drains and flashing and those sorts of things. I ask for your approval to award that to Branks General Contractor, which is the same contractor we awarded to for Sangaree.
All right, we have a recommendation from the administration, Mr. Thomas, for a new roof, partial roof at Berkeley High School Gymnasium. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve IFB 450 for Berkeley High School Gymnasium partial roof replacement to Branks General Contractors for a cost of $138,600 as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 10.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Wofford and seconded by Mr. McQuillan for a motion to approve the IFB 450 with the Berkeley High School Gymnasium partial roof replacement to Branks General Contractors for a cost of $138,600 as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda item number 10. Do we have any further discussion?
I do have a couple questions. Is this on the, I might have missed it. Is this on the new gymnasium or the old one?
I'm assuming it's the old one. Connie, is that correct? Yes, the old roof.
So if this, is there any warranty left on the old roof that's on there? No, okay. So if we do a partial replacement and then do another partial replacement to make it a whole in a couple years, are we gonna avoid the warranty that we get with this partial replacement? Say that one more time?
Most of this is ceiling and parapet walls between higher and lower roof. So since they're two separate roofs, you can't do separate walls.
Okay.
Any other questions? If we ask the question, all those in favor of the motion, respond with saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Mr. Thomas, do you have your?
Thank you, Mr.
7-0.
Chair. Next item on the agenda is the FY 15-16 budget. Linda, if your presentation was a saga, this is a mini-series or a reality TV show, but I don't like either one of them, to tell you the truth. As you know, last week we had the workshop at MNRIV where we talked about the priorities, general state of revenue for the state of South Carolina and specific to Berkeley County Schools. I've kind of called this down just to kind of get to the meat of the budget, and hopefully we can get some direction tonight as to where y'all want us to go forward with a target date of June 23rd for the public hearing. So we'll kind of go through that and see what sort of questions you may have. As you know, these are the standard levels of revenue that we can access, increase in Act 388, which is about $900,000 plus the 388 millage, which we will talk about the catch-up phrase as well. The increase in the base student cost of $3.4 million, and reminding you that $1 million of that is coming from lottery monies that they're throwing into the base student cost. Enrollment growth of 488 students, or about $942,000, based on the base student cost of 2,220. Also, as a reminder, we're losing annually $4.5 million in revenue that we could get if we were able to access rooftops in Berkeley County Schools. And as more rooftops grow, this number will grow. So wanted to kind of remind you of that fact. So Act 388 is hurting us and many other school districts that are growing. And to further make it worse, Act 388 is underfunded. I forgot what it was last year, but I think around $150 to $60 million. There was not enough money to fund Act 388, so it had to come from somewhere. So I'm assuming it came from state education funds. If you remember, we talked about Act 388 millage. Catch-up phrase is the section of the code that we made y'all aware of in consideration of next year's budget and as we address mills for next year. It basically talks about a 3-year catch-up. And the reason, again, this is most significant is because if we don't do something this year, we lose the year that we have the most mills that we left on the table. So we'll share that table with you right now. And that is 12-13. We left 8.1 mills on the table. 13-14 and 14-15. We did some partial mills increase based on Act 388, so we left 2.1 on there for each. And in 15-16, we were able to add 5.5 based on the population and CPI growth from the Board of Economic Advisors. So that's if you added all those up, that's about 17.8 mills. Again, I'd like to use this opportunity to round down whatever we do mills to make it an even number. So once we get to the public hearing, we'll talk about what that number might be. If you looked at all those added up, that's about 8.5 million in additional possible revenue. And again, this is to kind of put our thoughts together about, is this the optimal time to make a greater local effort? Again, also reminding you of the enrollment data from 2006 to 15, a consistent growth pattern, and more significantly from 2012 on up. causing the need for the facilities and the areas of classrooms and the overcrowding in the classrooms as well. So I wanted to share that again with you. Now we're going to get into the priorities that we talked about. This is the slide again from the growth by category to meet current Berkeley County School District formulas. We had a great deal of discussion about that, and we've kind of generally grouped those by category, and when you add those all up together, about 5.1 million. These are
Excuse me, Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Could you go back, please?
Nope.
And just for clarification, we have not been funding or not been allocating according to current formula because of budget shortfalls over the last few years. We have had some situations in many of our schools where we've not been funding up to formula, not only for classroom teachers, as Mr. Thomas pointed out, but also in those other areas when you see guidance, media center, but also in our support staff, clerical staff, custodians in our schools as well, that we have made cuts in order to be able to balance the budget. So we have shortages just to meet current needs, but then also in looking at growth as well.
Right. Thank you. This is the area of goal 2 of high student performance related to, again, you see that 5.1 number, but also some of the additional requests that we've gotten from the departments, and again at the bottom next to elementary, when we open that school, it's traditionally for elementary it's $1 million or so to open up a school. Middle school is higher, high school is even higher, so we'll continue that discussion when we start opening up other schools over the next few years. So so I wanted to share that list with you again, and again here's the list from support needs related to district level support that in the area of transportation, maintenance, HR, and Jerome's advertisement for another teacher evaluator. This has been a big point of discussion over the last this budget season in trying not only to do what we have to do with the STEP. As you know, when a teacher goes from 0 to 1 or 1 to 2 or 10 to 11, that averages about 2% across the whole salary schedule. For us, that's $5 million if we don't do anything with the budget, so we'll have to do that. You heard the discussion about bus drivers' raises, and then we've taken Charleston County School District's salary schedule, and we've had option 1, 2, and 3 for $3 to $6 million in additional cost if we were to be competitive with those scales, and knowing that that's 14, 15, 15, 16, they'll go up the step. I'm sure there are discussions about cost of living, but I don't think they'll get there. But we've had a lot of discussion about that in next year's budget related to the teacher salary schedule.
And not just, not just Charleston County, but also Dorchester 2 and 4.
Yes.
That we are behind both of those districts as well.
And 2 and 4 have the same scale.
They do.
This is just kind of a rolled up look at the cost, and kind of did a range. So $13.3 million to $19.8 million on our increases. And I'm going to tell you, we can't do much more than the 13.3, so we'll have to look at those priorities and scale down based on what you all decide with related to the mills and what we do there. So, but I just wanted to give you a range of what it would look like. New revenue without millage, that's basically the base student cost, Act 3D8, and student growth. And a little bit with employer fringe, but that's without any mills. The new expenditures are again that. The difference to balance the budget is 7.7 to 14.2, and that range is 16 to 29 mills. And as I mentioned earlier, we can only do 17.8. So again, we'll have to go through those priorities. Either the administration going back with recommendations, or y'all telling us what you want to do, but we will only be able to consider the 17.8 or below. So wanted to share that with you. Again, this is the slide related to state average, state medium, and district like ours. You can see us on the yellow line at 8,513. Again, this information is a couple years old because it's coming from the state and they're getting our financial audits and they're compiling all that together. But I would suggest that each year, every other school district is going up incrementally, and we're probably staying pretty close to the same. So our per student ranking is 67. Our academic ranking is 24. The state average is 9,791. So again, wanted to share that with you in your considerations. Next steps. As we talked about, we'll continue to monitor the state's website for additional state information. Again, like last year, I don't see any movement, unfortunately, even though the Board of Economic Advisors are showing some very positive movement in state revenue compared to the same time last year, but I don't expect that to change related to the base student cost. Local assessments, which I don't expect to have any information from the county related to any sort of assessments until usually after the budget's approved. And so I've always have done assessments on a kind of a lower basis just to make sure we have enough leeway in the revenue. Public hearing, as we discussed, on June 23rd. I'll have the notice in the paper on June 2nd. We'll also consider the annual tax anticipation note to allow us to have available cash before we start getting tax revenue from the county. And based on cash flow projections, our number has gone down about $1 million. So that's, our fund balance is helping us with that, reducing that number. And hopefully, if that fund balance can grow over the next few years, we can get away from having to do a TAN. But I know the staff and the teachers like to get those paychecks between July and December, so I like to have that little bit of insurance. And the rate is probably, the last year's rate was 0.019 something, so it's a very good 1-year note. So, and again, we'll advertise the notice with the range of expenditures as Mrs. Wofford suggested that we do, and I've actually prepared that notice, and I'll let you look at it, but it's based on 0 mills to the max that we could do. With that said, not a whole lot from last presentations from the public hearing, but it is our recommendation that the board consider assessing the entire millage available in order to meet the needs of the school district. And we could come back and go through some recommendations based on how we get there with the balanced budget. Thank you, Joy.
Okay. Any discussion?
We had to put a motion on the table first, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Well, this
It's recommendation by the administration to increase the millage.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that we increase the operating budget by 17 mills for budget planning purposes.
A second.
And that was 17. Not, I know 17.8 was mentioned, but 17.
Okay. We have a motion to increase the millage to 17 by 17 mills. It's been seconded by Ms. Swaby.
May we have the discussion?
Do we
now?
have any discussion
Walford
at this
has a
time?
question.
I was wondering, Mr. Thomas, do we have the allocations by school to include all the administrators and the support staff?
We do, and we have that and could send it to you. It's a lot bigger, more detailed, but we do have that.
I would like to see
Okay,
that,
sure.
please.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas, just so I have a clear understanding, and you know what my focus is, teacher pay. What will 17 mills do for our teachers?
Well, it depends on what you do with some of the other priorities. Again, we'll have to look at those other priorities and do some points of all of them, or not do any of those and do the teacher salary schedule, but we have to look at that to get to a balanced budget.
So the millage rate, would the millage rate allow us, if this board chooses in our next 2 meetings, to catch up with our local tri-county districts?
If you were to do the step and the $6 million option, you could do that, and that would get us above Charleston County Schools on all levels. But you couldn't do anything else.
Or maybe even something. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other discussion?
No, I'm good, thank you.
So, I got 2 questions. I'll ask my question first and then a point of clarification on the agenda. So we're in this rocky road right now where you're saying, or where my colleagues have said that we have to increase the millage by 17 to balance the budget. And you said that's with just one one elementary school coming online. What are we going to do if we're looking into our gray crystal ball for the next 2 or 3 years when we bring on a middle school, a high school, and hopefully another elementary school in the Tanner Plantation area?
Well,
How are we going to
that'll-
balance the budget then if we can't raise the millage nearly what we can raise it now?
There will be a combination of things that, again, we'll have next year's, the year after next, rather, Act 388. Hopefully, the state base cost will get even better. The year before, it went up only $19. This year, it went up 100. So the state of the economy is getting better. Another item of consideration is 16-17, we will have finished paying our certificates of participation debt, which is part of the general fund. It's a lease rental, but it was used to build, 95, we funded in 2008, but I think it was used to build Timberland and some of those schools back then. That goes off the books. So that's a $3.5 million expenditure that goes away that will help us balance the budget in 16-17 based on the debt service schedule that I looked at today. So a combination of those things, and again, if you remember miniseries or reality show, we'll just have to see. The state of education budgeting is not, they don't look forward a whole lot. But the CPAs have requested that we do a forecasting, which I've started that spreadsheet, and I've actually forecasted out about 10 years. So we'll start looking at that when we actually start working on those budgets, and we kind of see where our shortfalls are. The impact of Aldo, not knowing what the county and the state did with that on fee and lieu. But we definitely will get that, the reaps of the benefits of rooftops, not on the general operating side, but on the debt service side. So, but again, that would be a problem not only Berkeley County Schools have, but every school district that's growing.
All right, and then on I think it was your second or third slide when you were talking about the unfunded portion of Act 388.
Yes.
So what that slide is conveying is if Act 388 were not in existence, we're only being short funded by $4.5 million.
Basically, that's what it's saying. It is saying that the 4% homes that are out there,
Right.
if we were able to assess those at the millage rate that we have on the books now, we would be able to get $4.5 million more dollars. Basically, you're saying the same thing you just did, but
Right. So that still wouldn't balance our budget.
no, it would not. But it would definitely help.
And then I guess a point of clarification for the chairman: is this an item for information, or are we acting on this?
The budget itself was an item for information, but the recommendation was for us to increase them, to give them some information by showing that we were in support of this millage rate increase, so that they can go ahead and begin looking and going through the budget and prioritizing what they need to prioritize.
And you still have the option not to do anything when you come to the public hearing. You still have the option, because I will do the range on that public hearing notice, which is 0 to 17.18. I'll change it to 17. But again, it just gives us some room to kind of go through and prioritize and figure out what we might recommend at the next board meeting and at the public hearing.
So then that brings up a humorous point. Do we need a recommendation for a 0 millage increase too to be able to see that, or is he just automatically going to do a 0 to 17 analysis? So why are we voting on a 17 analysis if he's automatically going to do a 0 and everything in between? I mean, it sounds like now we're voting on it.
Mr. Chair, let me restate the motion from Mr. Obie in hopes that it'll help clarify some of his questions. My motion was to increase the operating budget by 17 mills for budget planning purposes. Madam Secretary, if you would allow the minutes to reflect that. It is my intention, Mr. Obie, this is a non-binding motion. Very clearly, it means nothing without the first and second reading in the month of June of the budget.
Crystal clear. Thank you.
Yes, sir. It's a good question.
Mr. Chair, there was a slide a while back in a presentation about Read to Succeed. And so, and this is related to teacher salary, so I'll get there in a second. We had the 3 presentations about the changes and the mandates, mostly unfunded. And so I'm wondering where the instructional dollars are fitting in to the budget you've presented to us now for the summer camps, the literacy coaches, those kind of things. I know we still don't have all the information from the state, but where is that fitting in, this capture that you have?
Again, I remember that slide, and it again might be part of the allocations by, those allocations at 5.1 million. But I know also we've had some discussions with Denise and Kevin may be able to explain where we are at that point.
Dr. O'Gorman, would you respond?
Dr. O'Gorman, yeah.
Mr. Schwab, then you can answer some of those questions, please.
Sure. For the most part, Mr. Schwab, those funds come out of our special revenue from the state office for the most part. At-risk, PDSI, lottery, those types of funds. We try to offset like the instructional coaches. There are some specific funds for summer reading camp that come from the state. And we have to just kind of backfill what they've not fully funded from those special revenues.
Okay, so no new dollars are needed necessarily for those items or the Career Academy work.
No, ma'am, not at this point.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to ask about are these things that require professional development and coursework, like Read to Succeed of our teachers. I know when we heard the presentation, I should have asked then, but I didn't. I know that districts are trying to cover those costs for teachers, but the bottom line is teachers pay for their own coursework. I mean, and when we talk about their evaluations, they're paying for their own coursework to keep their licenses. And now some of that is even more prescriptive than it's been in the past to meet the requirements of the state.
Correct.
And so I just wanted to put that out there, that when we're talking about classroom teachers and all of these things that are good things, and I'm not gonna start raining on your parade and being happy. I'm gonna try to be happy about it. But I think, as far as I'm concerned, the teacher salary piece, I'm just gonna stay on that soapbox for a while. We've got to take care of our teachers because they are still paying more out of their own pockets for school supplies, for things that they need to be able to meet the needs of kids. And while all of these things are positive and important, we can't let that get too far away from us. And it's not just Berkeley County teachers, every classroom teacher. It's a part of the culture of their work. And as long as I have breath in me, I'm going to remind as many people as I can that we have to be sure we're taking care of them salary-wise, particularly these teachers who are very happy here because we have all these individuals protecting them out there. They don't want to go to other districts. But if they're a single parent or 2 teacher parents in a home trying to have a family, it's very difficult to do.
Right. And as you know, my wife's a teacher at Al Hall, so I help
And if
a
it
lot.
weren't
I
for
help
your
a lot.
salary, she would just be
Right. My
running
daughter
up
at
a credit
Hanahan High
card.
School, so
Exactly.
I want to make sure they have everything they need.
Well, I'm not gonna feel sorry for you. My wife's a teacher too, so I'm not there with you.
Well, somebody's got to feel sorry.
Somebody, we'll feel sorry for each other. Just to piggyback a little bit on your comment, Ms. Reeder, I had no idea, and it's my fault. I'm embarrassed to admit it. I had no idea we were as far behind on the front end of the salary schedule as we were. And again, it's my fault. I apologize. I'm embarrassed. But now that I know, I'm going to fight like heck to get that straightened out. I hope you'll accept my apology and share it with the rest of the team.
Any further discussion?
I do have a
Ms. Lee.
question. On one of your slides, you have the growth positions for school level support. On here, it has 5 FTEs for special needs teachers. Does that include the paraprofessionals? Because I had
No.
heard at one point that we were going to pare that down just a little bit.
Yeah, that's teachers in special education.
Okay, so are we going to add any paraprofessionals to that?
I don't think so. I know Kelly's working through her special funds as well, so we can address that.
At the workshop that you were not able to attend, we did talk about that, and a lot of the paraprofessionals that are being cut, who explained, are those that were considered personal assistants for certain students, and we are looking at paring those numbers down. But as far as the required paraprofessionals in classrooms with special needs, we will meet those needs.
Okay.
It's just some additional that sometimes as we assign for individual students that may need an additional person, and we're looking at how we can best do that.
Okay.
I just have I guess a question for the rest of the board. I don't know if it's necessarily a wise decision that we ask Brantley to assume that we're going to raise it 17 mils when we may not all be willing to do that. I mean,
Correct.
I for one am not willing to increase it to that amount, so it may be a better course to try to figure out as a board where we think we are on that, rather than just automatically going to the maximum and let you assume that that's what we're going to do. Because I'm not in a position to vote to increase it to 17 mils. And I don't know if you are either, Dr. Murray.
I'm ready to take care of our teachers. It's been a long time coming, Mr. McQuillan.
And again, you have the option not to do any of it. Again, it's just giving us some direction as to come back with some options to consider. But that's definitely y'all's prerogative as well. So.
But you're going to do every scenario in between, if I heard correctly, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
The first scenario is step only. So.
Do I understand correctly, though, that it only takes the option 2 to increase certified salary schedule? That is $4 million?
Yes.
So we actually have that in increased revenue this year. So we could.
Yeah, but keep in mind we have the step that we have to do. So you got to.
That's 5.
Yes, that's
Okay.
5. So together is 9. So
Together
then
is 9.
When you add those two together, you have. Then you got to worry about the allocations and that kind of stuff. So.
Any further discussion? All right, then we have a motion by Mr. Murray and seconded by Ms. Wabi. And Mr. Murray, I'm going to have you read that motion one more time so we've got it clear exactly what we are moving on.
Absolutely. Madam Secretary, if you need any clarification, please let me know. And I've moved to increase the operating budget by 17 mils for budget planning purposes.
So we're going to call to the question. All those in favor of this motion, respond by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed to the motion by the same sign.
Aye.
So the motion carries at this time 4-3. So Mr. Brantley, you've got some playtime here now.
I thought it was Dr. Thomas, wasn't it?
It can be whatever you want it to be.
Thank you.
Does it mean it's time to go home, Charlie?
All right, then moving on to agenda item number 11, the superintendent's report. Mr. Franchini.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. We will have our annual retirement celebration this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at Berkeley Middle School. We have several retirees that we'll be honoring for their years of service to our school district, from administrators to teachers to support staff. If you have time, we would encourage you to attend and help us celebrate with those individuals that have given much to our profession. You already received a couple of times, I think, a list of upcoming promotion and graduation exercises for our district in the next week or so, and I hope that as your schedule permits that you'll be able to attend some of those, and particularly for those that are in the schools in your district. That's all I have at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, then moving on to agenda item number 12, executive session. Do I have a motion to move into executive session at this time?
I move that we move into executive session.
A second?
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Wabi to move into executive session, seconded by Ms. Lee. All of those in
I got
favor?
a question.
Yes.
What topics are we going to be discussing in executive session?
Could you read the ones that are listed on the agenda, Mr. Hayes?
Student appeals, attendance appeals, the expulsion appeals, personnel considerations, contractual matters, memorandum of understanding, and the employment matter of interim superintendent. All those in favor of going into executive session, respond by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Then, we are in executive session.